Welcome to another Life and Student Ministry post. My name is Tim Schmoyer, and I'm hanging out with my high school leaders. His name is Connor Murphy, and we are sitting in the airport because our flight's been delayed by like freaking 2 hours, so we got a lot of time to kill. So we thought we would just talk a little bit about the National Youth Workers Convention done by Youth Specialties versus the National Youth Ministry Conference done by Group and Simply Youth Ministry. Connor has been to both of them this year, first time for both, so thought we'd kind of compare him from his perspective, since I've been to about like 6 or 7 youth specialties conventions, and this is my very first Group Simply Youth Ministry convention. So Connor, as you think, we were in Sacramento for the National Youth Workers Convention by Youth Specialties about a couple months ago, I guess.
October?
That was. Yeah, October. And now you're here a couple months later at the Group and Simply's Youth Ministry Conference. What are kind of the biggest differences that you see between the two of them?
The initial difference that I noticed was Youth Specialties, the National Youth Workers Convention, I think that would be a great one for if you're first-time youth ministry. One of the big things I noticed is being kind of a merchandise guy, having worked in retail for a number of years before my current job. One of the big things I noticed, which is kind of strange, but they have the bookstore where they have all the resources at both conventions. National Youth Workers Convention had the big display area with all the different information on just different areas of ministry that you can get products from, and all the fun swag and all that kind of stuff. But so I like the fact that I was looking at it from the perspective of if I had just started as a full-time youth pastor, and I would like the fact that I would go there and there's people who could talk about their different products and all that kind of stuff. And not that I want to view either one from a sales perspective, but that was the big difference that I noticed off the bat. The second difference that I noticed was in the different seminars that we could go to. The National Youth Workers Convention had a more limited amount of tracks that you could choose from that were shorter in length, whereas this one had just a wide assortment of topics that you could go to. But I really liked that they had workshops that were broken down into 2-hour segments for a total of 4 different segments, 8 hours that you could go on just one subject. You could jump around. It was just a very, very diverse amount of information that you could go with, so you could really tailor what you were feeling you needed to address. And I liked that a lot.
Going back and forth a lot of this stuff too. I'll give my opinion a little bit, but what was kind of like the difference in the atmosphere, like generally, like as opposed to youth specialties and groups? Do you feel any kind of different vibe there at either place?
I honestly felt fairly similar. One area of difference that I did notice, though, was in the larger group setting. The National Youth Workers Convention, they obviously bring in a lot more bands, and they have a lot more main speakers, and so the time you're together in a large group it seems like that's more of the focus of their convention. With Simple and groups here, it seems that the focus is more on those training seminars. The large group sessions were amazing. The speakers that they brought in were very, very good. The worship was amazing, but there was a lot fewer bands. It seemed a lot more geared towards those who were in ministry for a longer time. And not to say that it wouldn't be good for newer youth pastors in any way. I personally see it as, if this is your first time, or if you're just starting out in youth ministry, this would be an incredible resource because there's such a wealth of information that you could learn from.
Yeah, I had some, mixed feelings both ways. Having been to the National Youth Workers Convention like 6 or 7 times, this might be a little tainted because I was kind of ready for a change, and I guess to be honest, and I kind of felt like I've been hearing a lot of the same things that youth specialties over and over and over again. And so going to the National Youth Ministry Conference was, for me, totally refreshing. It was recommended to me by someone I totally look up to, admire, and trust. And so I figured, go check it out. And the difference, I think, the major difference between the two conferences is that, for me anyway, I felt like the youth specialty ones was more of a big person on stage speaking down to not down like belittling, but down like, I'm the expert, you guys learn from me. Whereas at Group National Youth Ministry Conference, which is changing to the Simply Youth Ministry Conference starting next year, that it was more of a conversation between youth leaders. And that was evident in the fact that they had these big sack beanbag chairs all over the place where you could easily sit down and relax with the youth workers and just start talking. All the seminars had like small group tables, round tables for discussion and for people to interact. And when I was told that groups was more of a conversation, I was thinking, how do you make a conference a conversation with like thousands of people? How do you make that a conversation? So I had no picture even on how that would even work until I got to the conference, and I was like, yeah, it does work. And I was able to connect with people, and it was like more of a conversation in the workshops with me and the leaders and the instructors rather than like taking notes on whatever they said.
That was a big difference I noticed too. The speakers that they brought in at night at the National Youth Workers Convention, the headline speakers were amazing, but I knew that it was going to be very difficult if I had any questions to ask them one-on-one. They did have some talkback sessions and things like that, but it was very difficult. Here, it was amazing how you would see the speakers walking around the halls and interacting and answering questions. And
there was definitely like a lot of that element of connecting and relating and talking and an ongoing conversation all weekend long, rather than taking lots of notes and leaving feeling like you've been drinking from a fire hydrant. It was cool that like they had these deeper learning tracks at Groups National Youth Ministry Conference, where rather than going through all these different learning little seminars on lots of different random topics like a YS, you spend like the entire weekend just diving deep into one issue or one area of ministry or one topic that you really need to learn and grow in, like in your ministry. And so I just thought that was phenomenal. I left feeling like refreshed, and I left feeling like
I feel like exactly the same way. I mean, I would say if you can go to either one, I love the National Youth Workers or the one here, the Group in Simple Ministry National Youth Ministry Convention.
Yeah.
If you can only afford to go to one, both are terrific. Don't miss out. But that is one thing that I really notice. I feel refreshed. I'm excited to go back. I'm excited to apply what I learned. National Youth Workers Convention, I learned a lot, but I was exhausted at the end of it. I felt that there was a ton of information there, and I needed to do more once I got home in terms of just learning on my own.
A couple criticisms I have of the National Youth Ministry Conference was, one, the worship band, I never heard of them. That's fine. I don't really care if I heard them or not. But they seem to sing a lot of like their own songs from their albums, which I don't know. So I can only sing along with like a couple of the songs. And I wanted to worship, but it's hard when you're like trying to read and see over people's heads. And
it was kind of a gray area for me because I like the familiarity of knowing the group and knowing the songs, but at the same time I love the fact that I don't know who these bands are, so the worship seemed more about God. And
were they trying to sell a CD, or were they trying, So that was one criticism. Another criticism that I have is I didn't feel that there was as much value to the general sessions as at Youth Specialties. I skipped, I was late to almost all of them, and I skipped like one of them just completely, just because I felt like connecting with other youth leaders and talking, which is kind of the DNA of that conference, was much more valuable to me than whatever were going on in the general sessions. The third criticism I had was that there seemed to be like the schedule was like really rushed a lot of times, because there was all these connections that were taking place between people that you wanted to talk to, and a lot of things like there's so many things on the schedule you wanted to go to, but then like a lot of them went overtime, like speakers and seminars went way over, so you always felt like you're kind of rushed, and I wish there would be less on the schedule and more time for the interaction, the small group, the affinity groups, where you can join a small group and just talk with people who are kind of going through the same issues that you are. They're both great. And Connor he's recommending Group Simply one over the other. If I had to recommend one over the other, I also would probably lean that direction as well. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys, for another Life in Student Ministry post. Talk to you later. Bye.